Saule grup momon ta program regide tel program regide al tuta Salvador tel gibel ngodra igem la momrek lenitar elang rul betengela ar okke al metiang meng tel gibel ulung wai Seit ka di memrael adam eklol tutlel mela kadmo orongsia un tera blura Rusia el ngara ambasador mengkal el shogiringin nara blura huri pingel mei itirka kate beltam ngartiang at mamara ka basnge babangkeda ngal adalbay Seit Andres ngiam le presidenta senate do ngi egu titkil mo Honorary Consul Rusia tial blul tigel tege gidel blul ngartiang el guk Madrid ngartial rengas guk to tiang mutmokra do awngil dolong let kit metir. So this morning we are very honored to have as guest honorable ambassador from the Russian Federation and based in the Philippines, I understand, and your assistant. What's your name again?
Dmitry.
Dmitry. And then your name, ambassador, is Igor. How do you spell that last name?
Khovaev.
Khovaev. Okay. Mr. Ambassador, I think Mr. Andres have told you. I mean, for years and years, during the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, the image of Russians or Soviet Union that we knew when we were growing up is, I guess we can say, like they have horns. I mean, like they were dangerous people, these Russians. They're enemies. And in fact, our passport, the translator passport we had issued by the Americans, the countries that we're not allowed to go to is Soviet Union, Vietnam, Cuba, and all the communist countries. So in fact, I came to Europe in the 80s, 70s, late 70s. I tried to go to the Soviet Union. They did not allow me. I went to Switzerland to get a visa, and they did not allow me your embassy there because they saw my passport. They said, we don't allow you, so I couldn't go to your country. So anyway, I know world has changed, and so has Soviet Union, and now it's Russian Federation. So I guess first I will ask you to kind of explain a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what your background, and also your country, and then we go to the the relationship between Palau and Russian Federation.
First of all, thank you so much for inviting me. It's a unique opportunity to talk with you, with your esteemed listeners. You have just mentioned the former Soviet Union. So I would like to assure you that the current Russian Federation, so it's not the former Soviet Union at all.
It's totally a different country now?
No, it's not totally different because my country is still populated by Russian people. And they still speak Russian language. We cherish Russian traditions. We remember and deeply respect the Russian culture and Russian history and so on and so forth. But in terms of political system and economy, of course, Russia today is an absolutely different country. We have a democratic political system because all leaders at all levels, from the president of the Russian Federation until leaders of down to municipal leaders, they are elected by the people.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm saying again, all Russian officials are elected at all levels.
Mm.
So, and as far as the Russian economy is concerned, it's a market economy, unlike the Soviet system. Because in the Soviet times, of course, the economy was highly centralized. Everything was planned.
What's the population of Russian Federation now?
So about 150 million people. And Russia today is not the former Soviet Union in terms of size and population, because the former Soviet Union consisted of 15 republics. Russia was one of them. So now on the post-Soviet space, we have 15 independent states, including Russia. Russia is the biggest one, as compared with all other former Soviet republics.
I see.
So the population of the former Soviet Union was about 280 million people. The population of Russia today is about 150 million people.
In terms of land
So
size,
Russia is smaller than the former Soviet Union.
In terms of land size, Russia is what, the second largest country in the world in terms of land?
The first country.
Or the first? It's
Yes.
the largest in land.
Yeah.
And then next is Canada. And then China, or
I think Canada.
Canada.
I think Canada. Yeah.
Okay, so your economy is a market economy now.
Yeah, definitely, of course. You have just mentioned a kind of discrimination for Palauans, because Palauans were not allowed to go to the Soviet Union. So in my view, it's a kind of discrimination. And of course, I can only regret that a hostile image of my country was created here in Palau. So I would like to take this unique opportunity to kindly ask all of you, please, it's time to get rid of outdated cliches. I'm afraid you watched too many Hollywood movies about Russia.
Yes.
Especially about James Bond.
Yes.
So I'm calling on all of you, please forget all crazy Hollywood movies about Russia. Because they have nothing to do with the real Russia, with the real Russian people. Absolutely. It's a pure propaganda.
Okay.
A pure hostile propaganda.
Even today, you have some Western press, they make your president kind of monster, I mean, like,
they demonize President Putin.
Yes, Putin, So,
but President Putin was elected 4 times by Russian people. He's supported by the overwhelming majority of Russian people. He's our leader. So everyone can like or dislike him, but everyone must respect him because he is elected by the Russian people.
So in terms
He's
of...
a democratically elected leader.
So let me ask you a question. When did you recognize Palau as an independent country? And when did you accredit your ambassador from Philippines to Palau?
First of all, I would like to emphasize that it's a big pleasure and a great privilege for me to be the Russian ambassador to the Republic of Palau, though I am based in Manila. It was natural for the former Soviet Union, and it's natural for Russia today to support the aspirations of all nations to be independent. That's why the former Soviet Union supported the struggle of Palauan people for their independence, by the way. And I hope it should be kept in memory. It's a very positive, very good legacy for the future development of our bilateral relationship. So you see, there is no need to demonize the former Soviet Union. Because, to be frank, in the former Soviet Union, of course, they were both negative and positive things. Of course. So communist propaganda, communist regime, highly centralized economy, everything belongs to the past. It's part of history. Russia today is a different country, I'm saying again. And I see a lot of favorable preconditions which must allow our two nations to be closer to each other. Because it's time to open up new horizons. So Russia recognized the Republic of Palau. So as far as I remember, the Russian Federation established diplomatic relations with Palau in 1994, as far as I remember. Sorry, in
2005 to 06. Okay.
yeah,
I must say,
2006. Yeah.
The ambassador of the Soviet Union to New York support Palau's aspiration since when my brother was first appeared at the United Nations Trusteeship Council, testify in 1971, and only the Russian ambassador and the Chinese ambassador support us. That time we were the government of the United States look at us as like radicals, troublemakers. But since then, I know that when I appeared before the United Nations, it's only the Russian ambassador also who stood up, for our cause. And I know when High Chief Abdul and other leaders in Palau who did not support Palau become part of the United States, we want to be independent. We always, and it was a lonely fight because when you go there, nobody's there in the chamber except the Russian ambassador and the secretary of the Trusteeship Council. And we kind of speak in a vacuum, but they were there. And then when during the Trusteeship Council visit to Palau, they openly support Palau's independence and did not agree with the United States turning these islands into military base for U.S.
So thank you so much for recalling that. So believe me, please. So it was natural for us, and it's natural for us now. Simply because Russia has a quite complicated, even tragic history. So the Russian statehood has more than 1,000 years. More than 1,000 years. So, and in our history, we had to defend our land, our country, our right to be Russians, to speak Russian language against foreign invaders so many times. And we had to sacrifice a lot for our independence and sovereignty. That's why we deeply respect the aspiration of any nation, big or small, it doesn't matter, for independence, for sovereignty. And that's why the Russian ambassador, the Soviet ambassador in the United Nations, spoke in favor of the independence of Palau.
Mr.
Many years ago. So it was natural.
During the trusteeship days, it was only the Russian who have the voting in the Security Council who voted for Palau independence. And as that's why the United Nations was able to send a UN visiting mission to observe the 7 plebiscites that was held for our compact and our independence.
Yes.
It was only the Soviet Union, the Russian, who was sitting in the Security Council that paved the way for us to become independence.
And in fact, in 1992, before independence, we got word that Russia and China were opposed to U.S. getting Palau under its through this compact for establishing military base, because at that time they still have the 2 superpowers, U.S. and Russia. And I was a governor of one of the states, I was sent to New York, in fact, to meet with the Russian ambassador and Chinese ambassador and asked for their support, because if they did not vote to terminate the trusteeship agreement, we would not have become independent. So in fact, I went there and they were, they said, no, we don't want, especially Russians. They said, if U.S. take you guys under, they're going to establish military base in Palau and they're going to shoot us in case of war. So we had a long discussion. I think in the records of and then they finally agreed to vote yes to terminate the trusteeship agreement in 1994. That's why we became independent. So it's kind of thing that I cannot forget.
Mr. Ambassador, now we are independent since 1994.
My sincere congratulations.
Yes, and now Palau is looking for investment from outside of Palau. We are in a new era where you can see the world in your living room. And I heard that Russia was trying to invest in Palau. have you ever thought of asking Russians businessmen to look into possible investment in Palau?
Thank you very much for your question. It's a really good question. So, and once again, thank you very much for remembering the history of our bilateral relationship. And in this respect, I would like also to remind you that about 2 centuries ago, in the 20s of the 18th century, 2 Russian maritime expeditions visited Palau as explorers, not as invaders, but explorers, scientific explorers.
How long ago was this? How long ago? How many years ago?
2 centuries ago, about 200 years ago. In 1820s.
Is there some writing about it or some?
Yeah, and now just for your information, so now we we found a collection of artifacts, pictures, because at that time there was no photos, of course.
Yes.
And that's why the expeditions, those expeditions, so they had some artists which made a lot of pictures. Yes, and now there is a very good collection of artifacts and pictures in a museum in the Russian city of St. Petersburg, and now we are preparing a special exhibition to be organized here in Palau. So it's another very positive legacy of our bilateral relationship. So I'm saying again,
very interesting news.
These were expeditions of scientific explorers, maritime exploration expeditions. They came to Palau as explorers. They prepared very good, for that time, very good geographical maps, for example.
Wow.
They were not invaders, and that's why they immediately established very good relations with the local people.
Wow. That's
so
new.
you see, Russian came to Palau so many years ago as friends, as partners, not as invaders, unlike some other European powers.
Yes.
That's a big difference, huh?
Oh, wow.
So, and in the last century, so the former Soviet Union fully supported your struggle, your aspirations for independence. So once again, so it's a very good legacy for the future development of our bilateral relationship. So we Russians and Palauans, so we have all preconditions to be good friends and close partners. Simply because we need each other. Simply because we have to deal with the common threats and challenges. First of all, climate change. I would like to assure all of you that Russia is fully committed to the Paris Agreement on climate change. Absolutely.
For your information, as a student, I was a communist. So I read about Lenin, Karl Marx, and in fact, I tried to apply to Patrice Lumumba University in Moscow, and I could not get in. I tried to apply to
I'm sorry to hear that, because it's a very good university, and Lumumba, it still exists. It still exists.
Named after the African leader.
Yeah. After the leader of the African country, Congo.
Yes,
Patrice Lumumba. He was killed by the Belgian colonial administration.
Yes. So any
because he struggled for the independence of Congo.
Is there any, like the question I pursue that, is there any possibility of like investment or even tourists from Russia to come here? Because I went to like Saipan, I saw a lot of Russian tourists there. So that kind of investment or way in which we can promote.
Yes, and I understand. And let's talk now about the prospects. Not about the past, but about the prospects.
The future, yes.
The future of our bilateral relationship. So first of all, I hope you to understand me correctly if I remind you that unlike the former Soviet Union, now the government of the Russian Federation cannot instruct Russian business people to go to this or that country and to invest there or here. it's up to business people to decide.
And you have some rich people in Russia, some big
Yes,
business.
we have prominent business people. We have really big companies. So, as I have already said, we have a market economy. So, what politicians and diplomats can and should do is to create favorable political and legal conditions for our bilateral cooperation. And in this respect, so we have already made some significant steps. Just one example. So in December last year, so the visa waiver agreement between Russia and Palau has entered into force.
So we can
it's
go
a-
to Russia free of visa.
Now we have a visa waiver regime. So now Palauans can go to Russia with no visa. No visa obstacle at all. Can you imagine? And Russian tourists, Russian people can visit Palau
With no visa also.
without visa as well. So it's a very good preconditions because we, the governments and diplomats, we need to encourage people-to-people contacts. Because unfortunately, so most of Russian people, they don't know anything about Palau, and Palauans so still consider Russia as a kind of Soviet Union,
Yes, yes.
as a hostile state, a hostile country. So it's time for all of us to be open-minded. Once again, to get rid of outdated cliches. It's time to open up new horizons. So what we can and should do in practical terms? I think that we should focus on a few specific fields: education, tourism industry, public health. So I'd like to inform you that the Russian government has decided to grant 2 scholarships to Palauan nationals as the first step. Because we should move forward step by step. So and we are ready to increase the number of scholarships for Palauan nationals, because it's the best possible investment. Scholarships, education is the best possible investment into the future of our friendly relationship. So we need to explore new opportunities for our cooperation in the public health. Russia has a lot to offer because in the former Soviet Union, so we have a very good public health system. By the way, in the former Soviet Union had at least 2 very precious, excellent assets: high quality education system and high quality public health system.
And it was
Both for free. Look at me, for example. I'm a product of the Soviet system of education.
What education do you have?
So I was born in a remote small town in the Ural region.
Urals, yeah.
So it's like the geographical border between the European and Asian parts of my country. So it's about 2,000 kilometers from Moscow to the east. In Russia, it's not very far, only 2,000 kilometers. So
That's
it
about
takes
1,000 miles.
it takes 2 days to get to my hometown from Moscow by train. Only 2 days.
Wow.
Just for your better understanding, so it takes almost 6 days to get to Moscow from Vladivostok by train. So just to imagine the size of Russia.
Like from here to California?
Yeah. So, but of course, I graduated the secondary school. I became a student of the most prestigious university of international relations in Moscow. I became a diplomat and even ambassador. And I also graduated from the diplomatic academy.
All for free?
Yes. And I didn't pay even a penny for my education. And not only me, all people at that time.
Wow.
All Soviet people. So, and we still have a high quality free education system now. And that's why we have a highly developed science. We have a lot of wonderful scientists, engineers. So that's why we launch satellites to the outer space. So that's why we produce highly capable, sophisticated arms and weapons, because everything is based on sophisticated advanced technologies. So believe me, please, so Russia is not a gas station, as portrayed by mainstream Western mass media.
Yes.
Of course, we have abundant energy resources. It's our very valuable asset. But at the same time, we have a highly developed science and technologies.
So what natural resources do you have? Besides oil. You have oil,
We
right?
have everything.
You have oil, you have gold, you have ore, what, you know.
Everything.
You have gas.
Yeah. Natural gas. So now we produce a lot of liquefied natural gas.
And you sell to Europe and
Yes, in the Arctic area, by the way.
Huh?
And by the way, so even the exploration, the production of oil and gas under harsh climate conditions in Russia, so it requires, it's not easy. It requires sophisticated, advanced technologies.
And
Believe me, please, it's quite difficult.
in Siberia, most of it is snow all year round.
Yeah. So once again, so apart from rich natural resources, we have advanced technologies in many fields, and now, of course, we are preparing ourselves for the next industrial revolution. So Russia should be competitive in the current world, and that's why. So we need new partners, new friends. We need to diversify our foreign ties. And both Palau and Russia, just to remind you, both Palau and Russia, we are neighbors because both our nations belong to the Pacific region.
Oh, yeah.
So please, so maybe this idea seems to be quite strange for you, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
time to digest that.
So Russia is in the Pacific, in Asia, and in Europe.
Yeah, definitely.
Wow. That's...
But look at the geographical map. It's true. Russia is a Eurasian and Pacific nation.
So the only...
No country, big or small, is not able to efficiently cope with the current threats and challenges on its own. So we need to combine our efforts. All of us need each other. All of us depend on each other.
Now, as you know, the biggest issue worldwide against Russia is Crimea, Eastern Ukraine. Like it's been portrayed like this is a small part of Ukraine and Russia just moved in, took over. So, that's talking about independence and sovereignty of small people, small country. How is that? Of course, I have read that it was part of Russia before, but can you explain because the position of your government on that?
Regarding Crimea, so the position of the Russian government is very simple. Crimea is an integral part of the Russian Federation.
They speak Russian language.
Crimea has been part of Russia for about 300 years. Just one historic fact. In February 1945, three leaders, Joseph Stalin, leader of the former Soviet Union, Winston Churchill, Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, and the US President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. They met where? In the city of Yalta, in Crimea, during the Second World War. And they discussed the future of the world, of Europe, of the world after the end of the Second World War. At that time, Crimea was part of Russia. But unfortunately, so a bit later, Crimea was transferred from Russia to the Ukrainian Soviet republics. But it was done within the former Soviet Union. And that's why it didn't matter a lot at that time, because it was one country, the former Soviet Union. But in 1991, when the Soviet Union collapsed, was dissolved, so Crimea left as part of Ukraine. And it was unfair, because Crimea is populated mostly by Russian people. So Crimea is part of the Russian culture, of the Russian history. So Russian people so they had to defend Crimea against foreign invaders many times. So it's a place of Russian military glory. And by the way, Crimea is also the cradle of the Russian Christianity, because the first Russians were baptized in Crimea. So the Christianity came to Russia through Crimea. So Crimea is a very special place for the mentality, for the psychology, for all Russian people. And how Crimea was reunited with Russia in 2014 after the illegal coup d'etat in the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv. So the Crimean people, so they said that they don't want to be part of Ukraine anymore. And they voted at a referendum in Crimea. First of all, they voted for their separation from Ukraine, and secondly, they voted for the reunification with Russia. So the decision to reunify Crimea with Russia was taken by the Crimean people, not by President Putin, not by the government of Russia, but the people living in Crimea. More than 97% of people living in Crimea, so they voted for the reunification with Russia, because absolute majority of them are Russian, they speak Russian language, so they cherish Russian cultural traditions, they want to be Russian, they want to be a part of Russia.
Okay.
So, and their choice, their decision must be respected by everyone. So there is no way back.
I guess we understand voting.
Once again, so people
vote,
voted, yes. So since at that time, so 5 years have already passed, and anyone can go to Crimea and to ask people living there where they want to live. And believe me, please, so if, for example, any other referendum is organized now, so the result will be the same.
Yes. Okay.
Absolutely. So once again, I would like to stress. So the choice, the decision taken by the people, not by the Kremlin, but by the people living in Crimea, must be respected.
Can I ask you also just another question, political question? Why is that Trump...
Please, any question. I am at your disposal.
Why is Trump, attack his American political enemies so viciously, and other leaders who are around the world, but when it comes to President Putin, he's cozy with him. We never heard of him saying any negative thing or anything about Russia or President Putin. Does President Putin have something, U.S. President, or what?
I don't think that President Putin has any kind of special leverage or influence on President Trump. Not at all.
Okay.
And please, so only one humble request on my part. Please don't ask me about the so-called mysterious Russian meddling into the American presidential elections. I'm sorry for my undiplomatic language, but it's I'm sorry. It's so stupid. It's so stupid, absolutely.
Okay, so
as for the behavior of President Trump, I think President Trump is respectful, and President Putin is respectful too. So I can tell you confidentially, just between us.
okay, publicly. Okay, so look.
So I think that President Putin and President Trump, they respect each other, and it's natural for the leaders of two world powers. It's natural, and it's in the interest of global peace, stability, and security.
So tell me, Soviet Union was a superpower with the United States. Now Russian Federation. Is Russian Federation still has power enough, like military and otherwise, to be considered a superpower, or it has become secondary and the United States is the only superpower in the
So
world?
please, I'm kindly asking you to put all these definitions like superpower, power aside.
Okay.
I think now it's not really relevant.
It's not relevant, huh?
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely. Of course, Russia is a nuclear power. So there are only two nuclear powers in the world: the United States and the Russian Federation. In economic terms, so we have a lot to do in order to develop our economy. So of course, in economic terms, I have to say so. I have to say that so Russia is not an economic power. So I'm saying again. So our economy should develop faster, in a more consistent way, definitely. So now we are implementing reforms of our economy, and I hope that we'll have really good, encouraging results, because we have a huge potential. We have natural resources, we have technologies, we have well-educated people. So, and I'm quite optimistic in this respect.
You mentioned about your health service. As you say, education and health service were well developed in your country. As you know, Palau, we're having discussion in the leadership level of building a new hospital. In this area of health service, you think there is possibility of sharing, assistance and service between your country and ours in terms of health?
So to be frank, so I'm not in a position to give you specific promises in this respect. What I can say now, so we'll see what can and should be done.
Okay.
And we'll try to help.
And is this the area where Sadoi was asking about investment, where investment can be done between like your health service or
Yeah, and in
and-
this respect, so I would like also to recommend you, Palauans, to advertise your tourism potential in a more consistent and persistent way. In my view, so Palauan delegation should attend, for example, the international fairs and exhibitions, international tourism fairs and exhibitions to be held in Russia every year. Because Russian people should know more about Palau, about your tourism potential. So you should be, if I may advise you, so you should be more aggressive in this respect. No, aggressive in the positive sense of you, of course.
The Palau.
In order to attract more Russian tourists to Palau. And please remember, don't forget that among Russian tourists, there are usually many business people. So for them, if they come to Palau, so it's not only for them, it's not only an opportunity to spend well sometimes, yes, to have a good rest, but also to explore new business opportunities.
Well, I've met some Russian tourists here, and also some millionaires in a yacht. They have brought yacht here. In terms of transportation system, how far is it to get to, like, how do you get to Palau from Russia? You go to Vladivostok and then fly to Japan and here, or what's the best way? I mean,
I think the best way now, the best way to get to Palau from Russia is through Seoul.
Seoul. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Just one transit point, only Seoul.
That's interesting. Yeah.
So it's not really far.
In terms of hotels, hotel development, I think this is an area like resort hotel development here. We're still starting, so this is something that can be done also with businessmen from.
So that's why I have already mentioned that the primary task for all of us is to encourage people-to-people contacts. We should know each other much, much better. And I'm sure that if we know much better, so we'll see many new unprecedented opportunities for mutually beneficial cooperation. Of course, it takes time. And that's why we should be consistent and persistent.
Okay. Well, we're coming to an end, so we have your Honorary Consul here. Would like to say something before we come to close. They will be soon.
I'm sorry to Mr. Ambassador, if I may speak in our own. Ngi albolongali a masikiba mamo todagan ali amudi ligi mabua Russia. E mas vedro ni tapto con eso la tania ngalga Ministry of State la tede di una training a Moscow. Emle 2 weeks ago.
Oh, okay.
Yang lagi amra October na skala civil mascula Russia. El mas vedro to con eso main bisa Igor orangnya Ambassador Larionov. Ngirmang mugudum wasel international final ya bekara Russia. Adik masuk tira atau kapitol adam berbelau. La Russia madri grabación bay. Yang amal mengasulnya mercateal masuk con era Ambassador Igor masuk gal for secretary in May Dmitry. Masuk ada barang dengan masing hari yang ingin terwelgi mabur Russia. And if I may, Ambassador, Your Excellency, there was that a priest from the Orthodox Church. Okay, if we can just say something about Orthodox Church, to sort of confirm that Russia is free in terms of religion, and so that's why we
thank you very much for your question. Just for your better understanding, so most of Russian people are Orthodox Christians. So, as I have already said, so the Christianity came to Russia more than 1,000 years ago from Crimea.
They're not Catholics, are they?
We also have Catholics in Russia, but it's a quite small community. But most of Russian people are Orthodox Christians, and at the same time, of course, we have many Muslims as well. Because historically, Russia is a multi-ethnic and multi-religious society.
But the majority are Christians.
Yeah, Orthodox Christians.
Orthodox Christians.
Yeah. So, and the Russian Orthodox Church is it's a very special institution. So in Russia, it plays a big role in the spiritual life of the Russian society, of course. And we have a small Russian community here in Palau. So, and they also need support from the Russian Orthodox Church. So we highly value a very tolerant approach of Palauans, because I see that there is a lot of different Christian denominations. Yes, here in Palau, and of course I think the presence of the Russian Orthodox Church here, so it will be, it can and should be a new bridge, connecting Palauans and the Palauan and Russian peoples.
So your service is like Catholic Church. I mean, we have communion, we have.
The service procedures are different. But as for fundamental values, it's the same.
But your priests and bishops,
including communion, of course.
Your priests and bishops are married, right? They are married. They have wives.
Yeah.
Unlike our bishops and our priests, they're not. Catholics don't marry.
Yes, there is no rule of celibacy in the Russian Orthodox Church.
Okay. Okay. Well, we're coming to.
And we have no stories about, the so-called sexual abuses.
Yeah. Okay.
In this respect, so the Russian Orthodox Church has a very good image. Believe me, please. And just one example showing the difference. In the Russian Orthodox churches, there are no benches, no pews.
Oh.
All visitors, all people who came to the church, they must stand.
Oh, they all stand.
While
The service is going on.
yes, so only standing while communicating with the Lord. No sitting is the sitting is not allowed at all. So it's allowed only for the elderly and sick people.
That's interesting.
All other people must be standing.
Wow. That's new to me. Okay, so wow, thanks to.
And let me.
Why don't you close the?
Yes, let me share with you some other, in my view, quite significant remarks. So, when I say that we Russians need new partners and new friends in different regions, including the Pacific, it doesn't mean that we against anyone. It doesn't mean that we want to destroy traditional alliances, traditional partnerships. Not at all. We deeply respect your traditional partners, your traditional allies, but we see an objective need for all countries, including Palau, to diversify your foreign policy, to find new friends and new partners. And Russia is ready to be a new partner of Palau, with no damage to your relationship with your traditional allies. But your traditional partners and allies have no right to interfere, to meddle into the bilateral relationship between Palau and Russia. They must respect the choice of the Palauan society.
Interesting, yeah, interesting.
That's our fundamental approach. I think it's quite fair.
Can you answer in 2 minutes what happened to your the proposal to have a radar or something here from Russian Federation? Wasn't there some kind of proposal to put radar or communication system in Palau?
Yes. So we have already proposed that a station of the so-called GLONASS system, Global Navigation Satellite System, be installed here on the Palauan soil. So it's for purely civilian purposes, no military dimension at all, not at all, only for civilian purposes.
And that's under consideration now?
Yes, it's under consideration by the Palauan government. So it's a highly technological project. So it's this system is very helpful, especially in emergency situations. So it's a Russian alternative. It's a Russian system like equal to the GPS.
Oh, like GPS. Oh.
Yes, like GPS.
You can communicate all over the world.
Yes, definitely. So it has a global coverage.
Okay.
So and it's it's highly competitive. So we are ready to compete
Mr. Ambassador.
on fair conditions.
Okay.
Mr. Ambassador, do you see any interference with our traditional allies in terms of our relationships with the Russian Federation?
To be frank, so I'm a foreign diplomat, and I wouldn't like to make any specific comments in this respect. So it's up to you, to Palauans, to make comments in this respect. But we have to take into account the experience of our relations with some other countries, because I am based in the Philippines, and I know for sure that not everyone is happy with a good development of relationship between Russia and the Philippines. Diplomatically speaking. So we believe that any interference is unacceptable. So sovereign independent states have a right to determine their foreign policy without any meddling from abroad.
Wow, interesting. I guess that's
It's very clear.
So I have already explained to you
diplomatic answer.
that we Russians, we are very, very sensitive to everything related to our independence and sovereignty. That's why we deeply respect the sovereignty and independence of other nations. So we don't tolerate any interference from abroad into our domestic affairs.
No collusion.
No. So we don't tolerate any attempt to lecture us, to teach us how we should live and something like that.
this is an ambassador.
Yeah,
He's a
he's
diplomat. So at least he lay it for straightforward.
And this
I
is
try
what
to
I was
be
doing.
I try to be eloquent,
Yes.
unequivocal.
Okay. Well,
You know, this is what
And that's why
Russian
we
is
want
doing.
to build an equal relationship,
yes. No.
an equal partnership between our two countries, based on mutual trust and mutual respect. Because respect must be mutual, reciprocal. If it's not, there will be no respect at all.
Yes. So I hope, before you leave your post, move to another post in the world, make sure that we have established a good line of communication and transportation to Palau from Russia, because I know the port and the Pacific, is closer to us.
And by the way, so I have another proposal. So let's think together how to celebrate the anniversary next year of the Russian maritime expeditions, 200
Yes.
200 years ago.
Yeah.
So and maybe so it's possible to organize the port call by
Yeah.
Russian ships.
Yeah. And then maybe have exhibits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be
Definitely.
great.
Because I'm sure that Palauans, they deserve to know more about our common history. Because it's
wow.
it's part of the history of Palau as well.
Wow, that's
And
interesting.
once again, so it's a very good legacy. Because it clearly shows that Russians are coming as friends and partners,
Wow.
not as invaders and colonizers.
Wow.
So please make difference, okay?
Thank you. Well, that sums it all. So thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador and assistant and the local ambassador in Palau.
Much for inviting us.
Yeah. Sorry if I made you, a little bit uncomfortable on some of the questions, but
So please ask anything. No question can frighten the Russian ambassador.
Okay. Thank you very much. Madalo ay se kada dimertiang emo osmeritial ukam no tribal command di komanom saul ku di lakal mertiang ma aku kelal melong em lurior.